this episode of Purposely Curious, we discuss some very interesting rock and roll Hall of Famers, the Groupies. Groupies came with the rock and roll way of life for these bands, but some women took their groupie lifestyles as a career. We also discuss how some were an inspiration for Hollywood and how some were also inspiration for songs, even if not under the best circumstances. So get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Oh, note, Mary.
Hi. Where is that from?
Ooh, guess.
I don't know.
Since the holidays are coming up, I'm going to give you a hint. Did you see the movie Love Actually?
No. Or maybe I have. I'm not sure.
I would think you would see that movie because it's a British comedy, holiday, rom-com, you know.
Yeah. I probably have. It's like I can't retain so many movies, so I do forget a lot of them.
Oh.
So right now I can't. The name sounds familiar, but I can't tell you that I have.
So it's the one of the guys one of the side stories in the movie. The guy is a British guy. He's English, and he falls in love with this housekeeper or assistant who's Portuguese. So he learns how to speak Portuguese so he can propose to her.
Oh, so that was Portuguese.
Yes, my best effort.
Well, I didn't notice. So anyone from Portugal, let us know how you did.
Yeah, let Mary know how I did.
Yeah. So I wanted to, and I don't know if you care. Variety had you guys on this week. Was it this week? Yeah. Yeah,
they did. It was crazy. You know how I found out about that? It was because somebody tweeted about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody told us, nobody told me nothing, and I was like, "Whoa, what's this?" You know, and I thought it was a joke, right? And then because people were tweeting like, "I can't believe," you know, like this is like they were happy, you know, they were like saying, "I can't believe that they were mentioning something." I'm like, "What?" And I looked into it. I'm like, "That's crazy. We're in an actual variety story," you know?
Yeah. Do you care if I read what they said?
Go ahead.
So this is Leonie's baby, the Boo Crew, right?
Yeah.
And so what they wrote was this fast-moving series from the Bloody Disgusting Podcast Network occasionally sounds like a professional morning zoo radio show, albeit one where the host spent time trading quips about slasher movies and Godzilla films rather than dishing on reality TV stars and the local weather. Energetic co-host Leonie D'Antonio, Trevor Shan, and Lauren Shan welcome an impressive array of guests onto the show, including Midnight Mass director Mike Flanagan. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Chucky creator Don Mancini, or is it Mancini?
No, it's Mancini.
Mancini. And the Devil's Reject star Bill Moseley, and they keep the conversation flowing with ease. Briskly paced and extremely well produced, most episodes clock in at 30 to or 40 minutes, making them the perfect length for when you're on the go around town, but still want to hear Kane Hodder discuss life after Jason. So, clapping, congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so crazy. It's nice to be recognized by, you know, the big Hollywood magazine, you know, because it's
a big one.
Yeah, because, you know, you could tell people, hey, check us out, listen, check us out. And nobody ever does. Nobody cares. And then this is when you realize that, wow, somebody is actually listening, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, like somebody who writes, you know, is a critic or a, you know, somebody who writes for a magazine or newspaper, you know? So it's nice. It's nice to hear that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm happy for you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yay. So are you ready for this week's subject?
Ooh, are we talking about carving turnips?
No, we are not.
Thanksgiving meal prep?
No, we are not.
Why Bitcoin sucks right now?
No. It's about groupies. So you and I love rock music.
Yes.
And I was on YouTube one night and I ended up watching documentaries on rock stars. And next thing you know, I ended up on the Groupies section and I learned so much. There are so many groupies out there that we could discuss, but I'm gonna discuss kind of like the more famous ones. And again, groupies, I'm not referring to groupies of the present times. I'm referring to when it was like a glamorous thing, which was the 70s, maybe the 60s, late 60s, 70s, and 80s, right?
Right.
So if you have any yourself that you want to discuss, please feel free to talk about. But the reason too, I also wanted to mention was, there's a lot to learn. I laughed at some of these, and some of these, something will come up that I think you and I will probably discuss and it will discuss on how young some of these people were. I'm not going to focus on it, but it's definitely something that I was like, whoa,
right.
Whoa. But anyways, groupies is defined as a person or persons, especially a young woman. That's the key word there, right? Young.
Yeah.
Which we will discuss later, like I said, who regularly follows a musician or celebrity. In this case, we'll discuss rock stars. So what is your definition? Like, what do you, Leonie, imagine when you think of a groupie?
Well, I don't want to talk about my personal groupies tonight because they're listening, and I don't want them to get jealous, we shared different nights, so it's kind of crazy.
Oh my God.
Well, groupies, I honestly, I could not tell you what the definition is today of them because I think it's evolved, it's changed.
Well, no, I'm asking you, what do you imagine?
Oh, what do I imagine?
What do you imagine? We're not talking about today. Just when you think of groupie, like what era does it take you to?
I can tell you what I've seen. I can tell you what I've seen for sure.
Yeah.
In the 90s, when I started working in radio, late 90s, so I worked all the big rock shows, everything you can imagine,
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely would see the groupies, like the stuff that you would hear, all the stories from the 80s, it just carried on to the 90s, So it's the girls that hang out with the bands, they're the ones that get invited backstage, all access, they're in the band's dressing rooms. They're not, at first you're like, oh, is that the girlfriend? Is that the whatever? And they're like, no, they just, they get invited because they're big fans of the band, they support the band. They go to every show, every stop, every tour stop. Like, I don't know how they afford it or how they get there, but they show up everywhere, they're always on the list,
Mm-hmm.
and they're there to support the band. They're there like, oh, what can I do for you guys? Do you need laundry, this or that? So some of them are just like helpful. And then, obviously I think a lot of them, carry on a sexual relationship with them,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the bands are single or if they're cheating on their wives or husbands or whatever. I don't know. But it seems like that's kind of the reputation of them, that they do hook up with the band members, I don't know if that's the case 100% of the time, but it kind of seems like it is, or very much so. But yeah, you would say that, that they're like the band's number one supporter. Now, are they truly the supporter, or do they just want the hot guy, because I've had friends, who've confessed to me, they're like, I don't even know the music, and I'm like, why are you here? I just think he's hot, so I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least you're honest, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
So that's just about as far as I can go with it. Because honestly, once that the 2000s after that hit, I kind of, I think a lot of this evolved because after that, there was a lot of weird rape allegations and underage minors and stuff going on like that, that were being caught, and drug abuse, and these people groupies that died with band members because of doing bad drugs and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it now is being regulated, I want to say, by someone, who's looking after the band, saying like, hey, we're going to go on tour, but no fucking around, because we're investing millions in your band, So I think today, a lot of that stuff might be more online now than it is in person,
Yeah, well, R. Kelly has groupies, so.
Yeah, but he's in his own universe.
Still around though.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. So when I thought of like, groupies, I just thought of like the 80s glam rock, like the sexy blonde
oh yeah,
with the 80s hair. Like that's what I imagined.
Right.
But that's the extent of my knowledge of it. Call me naive. My parents did shelter me a lot. And those of you who have known me from a long time have probably have seen me grow up to the woman that I am now. I am still naive in a lot of things, but I've learned the hard way, saying stupid shit sometimes.
Right.
But what I didn't realize is that some of these groupies were, when I was watching this, again, at my age now, some of these groupies were celebrities.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I was like, oh my God. So I wrote down a few. And if you know of any, because there's a lot, but I was already overwhelmed. So I kind of picked the ones that kind of stood out to me. And then I'm going to start with BB Beal. Have you heard of her?
I know the name very, very well because she is, well, she's the mom to a very famous celebrity who was a model, very beautiful. And
yes, what kind of model?
I don't remember if she was print or fashion.
Yeah, so at 18 years old, she was a Playboy model who was on a cover at 18.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the daughter, not the mom.
Yeah. Oh, I'm talking about the mom.
The mom,
so,
yes. Yeah, she was Playboy.
She was an 18-year-old Playboy model who moved to LA, California. And she stated in an interview that when she was on the cover of Playboy, the rock stars started calling her, right? So she was 18. She was of legal age. And so she said she got really sucked into the life and she wanted to kind of become the life of the rock star or people in that crowd, if that makes sense.
Right.
So she started going to a lot of shows. But because she was a Playboy model, she had kind of like guys wanted to mess with her, right? These rock stars, right? Because, they're partying and that's the life they live. So through the years, she was linked to Elvis Costello, Mick Jagger, but the most known is who she had a baby with, which was Steven Tyler from Aerosmith.
Yes.
And we all know that the daughter is
Liv Tyler.
Yes, who's beautiful. My God, and gorgeous. But did you know that she didn't know, she never told anyone that Liv Tyler was Steven Tyler's daughter until 9 years after?
I didn't know that.
I knew that. Oh, well, no, I didn't know that. Sorry. I didn't know that. I learned that. I learned that. Yes, I learned that when I was studying Groupies, was that she apparently withheld that information because she was with a rock star guy. She had a boyfriend. His name was Todd Rundgren. And so she told him he was the father. She had an affair with Steven. But the reason she said she kept the affair, she kept that information was to protect her daughter because Steven Tyler at the time was just using heavy duty drugs. Life was out of control. So what she states is that she was trying to keep Liv out of that, like protect her. And then I was like, man, that fucking sucks because now everyone knows that they're, daughter and dad, right? And I'm like, that sucks. For 9 years, the other dude thought he was the dad. Like, what the fuck? I feel so bad, but I didn't know about this.
Yeah, I didn't know. That's crazy.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Had you heard it? So you said you had heard about her. Any other info you might have heard about her?
No, I mean, that's the extent I know that she was a model. And then, of course, she's a Playboy. And then, of course, her famous daughter. That's as far as it goes in terms of my knowledge, because of her and Steven Tyler, that's about it. I don't know anything else about her.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, now you know. For she kept his paternity a secret and, she was cheating. So she kept it a secret and then eventually had to confess. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that. I just assumed they were always out, that they were father and daughter. Because that's all I remember. But I got some little gossip from the 80s.
That's crazy.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to talk about was, I guess she was really, really big. And this is where it gets really controversial. But she is Sable Star.
Okay. I've heard of this name, yes. But I don't know
what
anything.
Have you heard?
I don't know anything about her.
Okay. So there's a lot of articles written about her, but she was part of the Baby Groupies. Apparently there was a group called Baby Groupies.
Oh, no.
So professional groupies, right?
Of course.
So she is one of the most famous and also sadly one of the most controversial because of her age. She was known in the 70s as the queen of the groupie scene, especially in the LA area to begin with. At the young age of 12, she lost her virginity to the Spirits guitarist Randy California. She was born here to a wealthy family here in Rancho Palos Verdes, which is where I live. By where I live. So she was 12 years old. Okay.
That's crazy.
Again, it's very crazy. And so when you look at pictures of her, Miss Sable Star, at that time, she looks a lot older. So you see girls now, right? With makeup, they look 10 years older. Some girls that are 18, 20 look older than me, guys. Like, so when I was looking at the pictures, she looked older.
Right.
But it brings up this thing that I kept running into is how young these girls were. And again, I'm not going to go into it too much, but it's definitely rock stars like young petite girls, right?
Right.
But she was 12, okay? She then started to frequent after that, Whiskey A Go-Go, which is a very famous, iconic club on, is this Sunset? It is on Sunset.
Yeah, it's on Sunset, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very iconic. There are a lot of bands were discovered there. I actually drove my little brother there for a show or two when he was younger. Oh, my little brother. Anyways, he's a 30-year-old man now, but
him.
And she, became entangled in the world of the rock music, right? And again, she's 12. She's already lost her virginity to a rock star. And then have you heard of Iggy Pop?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yes. So in his song called Look Away, Iggy Pop says, I slept with Sable when she was 13 and her parents didn't care. Those are literally the lyrics.
That's fucking crazy.
Did you? Yeah. Like, what the fuck? And he wrote it in a song? Now, we can do another episode about inappropriate songs, too.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah. Had you heard of that? I didn't even know the song existed when I looked it up. Yeah,
I think at some point I did hear this story, but of course, because I hear a lot of stories, there's too many. There's when you think of Guns N' Roses, the Rocket Queen story, the Spaghetti Incident story, it's like there's too many to tell,
Yes, and I didn't even touch them yet. I feel like I would have had too many stories if I'd gone Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, you could only do so many, so... But yeah, that's crazy because Iggy Pop is older,
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, for the fact that parents did not care. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, those are dangerous times, because like today the band would be arrested immediately, or the guy or whatever, like no questions asked. Like you're seen talking to a young girl, you're being arrested, Back then it was like, oh, it's cool, here's some drugs, let's have sex, and it's just like...
Yeah, and when I was reading the article on Miss Sable Star, they also talked about that it was just expected that young girls would be there. And the police and security, no one said anything. It was part of the atmosphere, right? So by the age of 16, she was rumored to have hooked up with Mick Jagger. Here he comes again, Mick Jagger, right?
Yeah.
David Bowie, Alice Cooper, and later, apparently, with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page.
Jesus, she did the whole the whole star lineup right there. Damn, she's like all-star.
There's more. Yeah. So she's the groupie of all groupies. Okay. She continued. Then she met a boyfriend. And so his name was Johnny Thunders of the band The New York Dolls. So they started dating. And she's, again, 16, right? I think he was like 18, 19. I can't remember. He's of legal age. So they start dating again, still underage.
Right.
And again, she's already hooked up with all these other big legends, right? She moves to New York to where there's a huge punk scene, right? And so the New York Dolls start to, they finished their tour. So when they come back to New York, they realized that her family had reported her as kidnapped, even though she's the one who left.
Right.
So the whole band was arrested at the airport.
Oh, damn.
I was like, damn. Yeah.
That's crazy.
But I couldn't find anything after that as far as like, you know, obviously they released them and everything, but she apparently after like a few years after that just kind of just disappeared. And I think she was living in Lake Tahoe. But definitely she was one that was like known, like she had that song made for, but she was the one that was one where people realized she was underage when she was going to these venues without her parents and having relationships, right? So she was underage for the most of it. Yeah. And now she's one of the most famous groupies of ever, you know, and if you see pictures of her, she looks like that, ideal, like what the rock girl back then with the blonde 80s hair, 70s,
of
right?
Of course, yeah.
And I, by looking at that, wouldn't think she was underage, but yeah.
But back then, it's a lot of these girls could easily pass for older, you know?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
not just the groupies, but you think of, oh my God, what was her name? Tracy Lords, who was a famous porn star. I think she was doing porn when she was underage.
No.
And she had a fake ID, you know? And if you look at those old pictures, like she does not look whatever, 15 or 16, you know? Mm-hmm. Like she looks like 19 or 20, you know? And
yeah.
Because, you know, the big teased up hair, the heavy makeup, the crow, you know?
Yeah.
If you got boobs, great. You know, if you wear certain clothes, like nobody's going to question that. You look older, you know?
Yeah.
Today, it's like, fuck you, show me your ID, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's crazy.
The makeup is crazy. It's what it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it was heavy makeup too back in those days, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, have you heard of Anita Pallenberg?
No.
So she is famous for the band The Rolling Stones.
Oh, interesting.
The band The Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
She dated guitarist Brian Jones in 1965 for about 2 years. She would travel with them on tour, you know, because she was dating him. Well, apparently somewhere in Morocco, the band walked in on him assaulting her.
Oh, shit.
Like beating her up. So Keith Richards stepped in, grabbed her, took her away. And next thing you know, she is in a relationship with Keith Richards.
Oh, damn.
So she went from the guitarist to the other guitarist, right?
Of course.
And obviously, you know, they didn't want that. But apparently she also slept with Mick Jagger. So she made her rounds in the band. But would you call her a groupie if she's dating them? Seriously? Or?
Well, is it even called dating? Come on. Come on. Let's be realistic here. So
think about this. The Rolling Stones, and I'm like listening to this. Like the Rolling Stones were big, what? 60s? 70s?
Oh, yeah. Up until 2 days ago, because they're still touring.
Well, they're still touring, yeah. But this is the stuff like we hear about them touring all the time, but like this is stuff that was like, what? Like,
yeah,
the drama. Like these bands had fucking drama.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So have you heard of Renee Trumbull?
Yes, I do know that name, but I don't recall the connection.
So there are multiple people who inspired the movie Almost Famous, but she was the most inspirational to the writer.
Yes.
So for the character Penny in the movie.
Okay, yeah. I've got quite a bit to share.
But again, I
have a lot to share with you about Almost Famous.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
Do you want to share now, or do you want me to just tell you about her? I'm good either way.
Go ahead, because I want to make the connection after.
Okay. So she moved to LA at the age of 18. So yay, someone of legal age. And so she was part of a groupie group that was called the Flying, I think it was like Garter Girls, Flying Garter Girls, which included her and 4 other groupies. And they literally their job was to tour and see all the bands that they loved. Like they had a name for themselves, and that's basically what they did. So they would travel. So it wasn't as crazy as the other ones we discussed. And so they definitely were known by all of these bands. And so there's a lot of stories and that were told. And so she's like the main inspiration for the movie, although it's inspired by multiple stories. But that's what the writers kind of envisioned was like her as far as like the traveling. So it's not too rated X, right?
Right.
But after 4 years, the 4 girls called it quits because it was like a lot of work. But they're basically in the Hall of Fame about this movie, or now with the movie. But fill me in on your stuff.
Oh man. So what do you know about Almost Famous? Have you seen the movie, first of all?
No.
Oh my gosh, Mary.
Well, I'm not that big on movies. You should know this.
I think my heart just stopped. I need help.
Yeah, I like TV shows.
No, but seriously, you have to add this to your list.
Mm-hmm.
You have to add this. I'll have to find it for you later to see where it's playing, streaming, whatever. But it's a movie you have to watch, especially because if the groupies, are a fascinating thing, The interesting thing about the movie Almost Famous, that came out in the year 2000, okay? It was directed by somebody called Cameron Crowe. Now, the movie is about a young boy, right? Like literally 15 years old, 16, or no, I think it was 17, 16 or 17. He calls up Rolling Stone and says, hey, I want to do a spread on this band called Stillwater, okay? Not a real band,
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they said, yeah, sure, whatever, we'll pay you whatever, So it turns out that he gets the gig, right? So the band is like, hey, kid, join, just come on our plane, just join us, just come on our bus, and we'll go on a few tour stops, And the kid's like calling his mom every day, like, Mom, like, I'm going to be a few more days, and then it turned into months, and then ultimately he missed his high school graduation, okay? So he was on tour with the band Stillwater, and he met the Groupies. And you mentioned the inspiration for Penny Lane, which is played by oh my gosh, what's her name? Kate Hudson. She plays Penny Lane. And there were other Groupies like Anita Miller and Plexia Aphrodisia and Sapphire, played by Anna Paquin and played by Fairuza Balk. So the band has all these Groupies, and he's on tour with them. And the girls, they look at him and they're like, "Oh, you're a young virgin, aren't you?" And he's trying to keep his mind together to get the story. All he wants is the interview from the band,
Mm-hmm.
And the band's like, maybe later, kid. Like, go hang out with some girls. Go, whatever, right? So he never gets the story because he keeps getting pushed aside, But the girls are like, "Oh, he's young. He's a virgin. Like, we should do something about that, So it's a coming of age movie, okay, where he's discovering sexuality through Groupies, and he's observing the Groupies, okay. Now the fascinating thing about this movie, the most fascinating part, is that boy, played by Patrick Fugit, he plays William Miller. That boy in the movie is actually Cameron Crowe in real life. Oh. He actually did that.
Wow.
So the cool thing is, if you own the DVD, which I do, but I don't even know where it's at, there's an extra features. We can actually read the article that he wrote for Rolling Stone. And the bands that he toured with. And I'll tell you the bands he toured with. He interviewed Led Zeppelin, the Allman Brothers, Yes, The Who, David Bowie, Elton John, Peter Frampton, and Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Wow.
So he was on tour with these bands. And the stories that made up the movie, Almost Famous, with the Groupies, are from his adventures with Bowie and the Allman and The Who and all these bands.
Yeah.
So these stories are actually like real,
Yeah, yeah.
And some of them are heartbreaking. Like there's a part in the movie where one of the Groupies gets traded to a different band because she gets traded with a pack of 6-pack beer.
Wow.
Because the band members lost a hand of poker. They're playing poker one night at the hotel room, and he's telling the girl, he's like, "Don't you see what's going on? Like, they don't care about you. They're using you."
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't you even care? And then she's like, whatever, we just continue on, life goes on. And so it's a very fascinating movie because it definitely it's telling the groupie stories of all these women you're mentioning.
Yeah. So I definitely am going to watch this movie. You have my word, because it came up again with another groupie, which is Pamela DeBar.
Yes.
Who was the rock star Franco Zappos of the Zappos nanny of his kids.
Interesting.
And so that's how she got the in to the rock world. And she has been hooking up. She has hooked up with Jimmy Page, Mick Jagger, James Morrison, just to name a few, apparently.
Damn.
And she did write 2 books, one which Kate Hudson did read to help her with her role as Penny for the movie.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah. So that was interesting. So I thought that would be something to discuss. And again, this movie came up, so I was like, I need to watch it. It's just hard. I'm definitely going to watch it. Definitely going to watch it. It's on my list.
It's a good movie because it has to do with, the boy is innocent, like he represents innocence. The girls are not innocent, but they're clearly underage as well. And they're on tour with the bands. And you see their explanation as to how much they care about the band,
Mm-hmm.
But of course they're hooking up with the bands, and
Mm-hmm.
multiple members and different bands at the same time, it gets crazy. And at the same time, the bands have wives at home or girlfriends,
Yeah.
So it's a sad story where you see that there's definitely cheating going on, but it's about the innocence of the youth, the younger people, So,
Mm-hmm.
and then the fact that it turns out that, it is a real life story of Cameron Crowe, and he actually went through this, is so really interesting, because you can actually really, you could easily Google and find the Rolling Stone article he wrote when he was 16,
Yeah.
because they didn't know. At the end of the day, Rolling Stone had no idea he was underage. Like when they found out he was a kid, they were like, "Holy shit!" They totally had a heart attack.
Sounds like they weren't vouching anybody.
No, well, again, this is supposedly
Mm-hmm.
I think in the late '60s or early '70s around
Yeah.
there. Nobody
Yeah.
cared. Again, girls are minors. Nobody cared. This kid was a minor. Nobody cared.
It was just accepted. Yeah.
It was that's crazy.
Yeah. So I'll definitely watch it. So I think I have 2 more that I'm going to talk about. Have you heard of Sweet Connie?
I've heard the name. Yes.
Yeah. So she is from Little Rock, Arkansas. And so she was known to give a helping hand in oral stuff. That was like her thing. Also probably underage.
Damn.
She has pictures with a lot of rock stars, and she's continued going to concerts until old age. But again, she wasn't doing that, but they all knew her as they were older.
Right.
So she's kind of like, they would see her and be like, "Hey, what's up?" Even though they were old. But she's made it into a song. Do you know that song, "We're an American Band"?
Yeah, it sounds
We're an American band.
Yes.
We're an American band. Okay. We're coming to your town. Okay, I'm getting out of control. So in the lyrics of the song, they said, "Last night in Little Rock, they put me in I think it says, last night in Little Rock, put me in a haze. Sweet, sweet Connie doing her act. She had the whole show, and that's a natural fact." So basically, she made it onto the song.
Damn.
So basically, one of the greatest hits. We're an American band. Okay, I need to stop. I love that song.
Imagine that. Sex so good, you make it into a song.
She was doing her thing. Yeah. We're an American.
Right.
And I want to finish off with the one that made me laugh, because there's an actual documentary that I've added to my watch list. I'm having a hard time keeping track, but this was, again, I didn't touch the 80s that much, because I'm already overwhelmed in general with like the 80s bands, right? Glam rock. They were fucking crazy. We can do a whole episode just on 80s.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think we should do it. Let's add that to the list.
Right.
But her name was Cynthia Plaster Caster.
God, that's
Have you heard of her?
total porn name for sure.
But she's not a porn star.
I know. Well, we don't know. Yeah, who knows, right? But God damn, that's a name.
She was obsessed with rock music. But she was also an artist student. So she was like, how can I She was like a groupie, not your conventional groupie. So she
Right.
made plaster molds of rock stars' penises.
Of course she did. Because that's what you do.
Guess who was the first plaster mold that Cynthia Plastercaster made?
I want to go with Mick Jagger.
No, it was Jimi Hendrix in 1968.
Oh, damn.
Damn.
Jimi Hendrix.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And there's a picture of it, and I was like, whoa.
You were like, impressive.
Whoa, shit. So there's a documentary that was released in 2001. So I'm definitely going to watch it. You know, but I think I need like wine and maybe a girlfriend to watch it with me. Yeah. But it's other molds that she's done is band members of the Kinks, also of Journey, the Beach Boys, 9 Inch Nails, because she still does it sometimes. And she also did female rock stars, but this was more after she got famous for having done these rocker guys, right? I like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, so she did both of the girls on there. But I didn't even delve into how at that point. I was just like, okay, this is a lot. I was like, but I'm going to wait to watch the documentary of Miss Cynthia Plastercaster. I'm amazed. So she's not your conventional groupie, but she would basically do, you know, plaster molds of rock stars' penises.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So yeah, I'll let you know how this one is, this documentary, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, report back, definitely. I'm not going to watch it, but it is funny. It is funny.
Yeah, so she looks like one of my coworkers. She reminded me of one of my coworkers, Diana. Diana, you could tell was like a hippie. She's older now.
Right.
You know, she's like grandma, and so it was nice to see like her talking about it.
Right.
Like it's like no big deal. It's my art, you know.
Right.
But at the time, I was like, damn, this girl is doing stuff like.
That's crazy.
Not what she wasn't doing. What Connie was doing. She was, you know, art. She was doing art.
Right.
But Jimi Hendrix, can you believe that shit?
Yeah, I mean,
amazing.
I wouldn't like, you know, I would never have guessed him, but kind of surprised.
The first one in 1968.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's cool.
Yeah, he signed it and everything.
Damn.
Yep.
That's wild.
So mostly the groupies that we talked about were kind of like in the 60s, 70s when it really took off. I didn't really delve too much into the 80s, although, you know, I think it kind of, you know, crisscrosses and stuff. But definitely the 80s, I feel like glam rock would be, I mean, they were on another level of partying.
Oh, yeah.
They were more like reckless, less wreck shut up type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I definitely think we should do an episode on that. But again, the saddest thing in all of this and what I kept seeing was that a lot of these were underage. A lot of, you know, I would say 50-50, right? Some of these were really underage. And the fact that Iggy Pop wrote about it in a song that she was 13, like, yeah. So that's another episode we can do. There's a lot of creepy shit that I've seen that people have brought up about lyrics out in the open, and you look up the songs and it's total out in the open. So we could definitely do an episode on that as well. But I didn't want to focus on that as much, but I definitely think we can get an episode on that. So
let me ask you something. What do you think? Why do you think the groupie culture existed or exists still? I don't know. Maybe today it still does. I don't know. But why do you think it existed? Because think about it. These are probably the hottest guys in their prime at the time, right? They could get any girl they want. Eventually they all dated supermodels, right? Or married them, right? Or whatever they wanted, right? Why would they settle for a 12, 15, 18-year-old groupie?
Easily manipulated.
But is it?
But
I was thinking about that's really interesting you mentioned that, because I was thinking about that. Were they manipulated, or are they part of a pool, like a group, a cult, that it's already understood by everybody, promoters and managers, and that they can do everything you want, but they're very quiet and they won't like publicize and share photos. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Is it that culture?
Well,
Is that why?
I think so. I think too that a lot of these girls maybe didn't want to fall into it because I remember being young, right? I mean, I'm still young, guys, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, you young girl.
I came in kind of like I was young where I started to really love rock music, like when grunge was around. So it was a big deal to be able, even the fact that I was young, underage, my mom wouldn't take me, but I wanted to go see these bands. You know what I mean? It was just I wanted to be a part of that atmosphere that I would hear about, the mosh pits and all. God, I'm so glad I didn't go because I would die. But that was like my dream because you would see magazines, music videos, MTV. They kind of sold that concert stuff live.
Right.
So I think a lot of girls go in with wanting to be a part of it. Obviously, it's not the same now, but some of them probably, and that's one thing that I read over and over is that some of these girls like the lifestyle. And so it was very easy. So I don't know what the conversations were as far as the industry, but what I kept seeing over and over was that these girls wanted that life and it was understood by the people around. They just looked the other way. It was normal that these girls were underage. Everyone knew, nobody asked. So definitely, I wouldn't say a cult. I mean, I guess you can say all of that is a cult because we have the Weinsteins and all that shit, now. But it was just openly, girls are naive, just as some guys are when we're young, right? We're all naive. And so I think it was just easy for them to be wooed by the glamour and then get a taste of the life, right? Going behind the scenes, you brag about it, and next thing you know, you're on to the next band, And so that's what I think. But I'm still at, like I said, I didn't want to touch on it too much and focus on it too much. But the fact that there was like lyrics out there and when I started looking at songs, there's so many in every fucking genre talking about shit. And when you listen to it and actually pay attention, they're talking about underage girls.
Oh, totally.
And this is in every genre. So I'm definitely going to start looking into that. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, the one thing I just never get, again, you have, these band members like Jimmy Page and all that, who all the guys in the band are fucking good looking guys. And, and it's like, then you hear the stories of like, oh, they shared these girls. And I'm like, what? I'm like, like, I guess, I don't know. That's weird to me. Like, you could have any girl you want. And it's like, you choose, these underage girls that are groupies. Yeah. And then you share them.
Fantasies. Yeah.
Then you pass them around and other bands share them. I'm like, I think about, wow, imagine all the STDs and all the wonderful gifts that come with the STDs that keep on giving, So it's like, shit.
Pamela Anderson said she got hepatitis C from Tommy Lee.
Did he ever deny it? Did he ever say it was him or not? Or
she said it was him. He never denied it.
Because the funny thing is,
he's a fucking hot mess.
Well, I mean, yes, but isn't it funny that like she's the one that gets sick, like she's the one that gets treated for it, and then like you never hear about him, nothing, Well,
he's not saying it. That's the thing. Got it.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to say it. So just because he didn't admit to it doesn't mean she's not lying.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just
that's the thing. She's it's like he doesn't have to say anything just because he doesn't say. All these rock stars probably have stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. They just don't announce it. So, there was an interview I saw, the lead singer of Motley Crue. What's his name? I forgot his name. But he was young and they were interviewing him about the groupies. And I was so annoyed by him, but he was just saying they're there just to fuck. Those were his words on like TV. And I was just totally. Like,
Vince Neil. Yeah. He's Yeah, those guys never
douche.
Yeah, those guys are like, we're just
I'm sure he's changed. He's a changed man now.
Oh, now they all
that's
are.
why I was like, I didn't even get to the 80s because that was a hot mess.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so, but yeah. So I'm going to watch Almost Famous.
Yes.
Now that I have all this background information, and I'm going to watch Cynthia Plaster Caster documentary from 2001. So I hope you enjoyed this episode.
This was fun.
Yeah. Did you learn a lot?
I did.
Are you looking up the plaster molds?
Yeah, I'm going to go get mine, done.
From your groupies that you said you didn't want to talk about earlier.
Well, yeah.
You caught me off guard there. I was laughing. I was like, oh.
No, that's pretty wild. I can't believe like some of these bands still do that too. I'm like, that's really weird.
Yeah.
Like if you could plaster any part of my body, that's one that I would not want you to plaster. Because
I don't know that I'd be plastering anyone.
It just feels dangerous, you know? It feels like something could harden and get really, you know what I'm saying? Like something could go wrong, you know, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, cool, man gets stuck, fuck it, use a hammer, you know? But that part of the body gets stuck, dude, back off, you know?
Yeah.
We'll figure it out, you know?
Well, these were wild guys, so.
Yeah, it's crazy. Totally crazy.
Well, thank you, Leonie, for joining me for another episode of Purposely Curious.
Always my pleasure, Mary. Always. This is fun. This is great. I learned a lot.
Yeah. So did I. And so thank you guys for listening, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.
Adios.
Bye. That was episode 76 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms, and follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely the letter C Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.